Have you ever been connected to someone who made you feel incredibly close one moment and completely distant the next? Someone whose kindness felt genuine, whose attention made you believe there was something meaningful between you, and then suddenly they pulled away without giving you a clear reason. They were still there physically, but emotionally they seemed miles away. Their silence felt confusing. Their coldness made you wonder if everything you experienced was only in your imagination. You begin questioning whether they ever truly cared, whether the bond you felt was shared by them, or whether you were the only one who believed it was something special. But before you decide that their distance means they feel nothing, there is something important you need to understand. The person who looks the most emotionally unavailable is often the person struggling with the strongest emotions beneath the surface. Their silence is not always a sign of emptiness. Sometimes it is the result of someone trying to manage feelings they do not know how to handle. There is one quiet but powerful behavior that often reveals what an avoidant person cannot express through words. And once you recognize it, you may start seeing their actions from a completely different perspective. Many people misunderstand avoidant attachment, and that misunderstanding creates deep emotional pain. They look at the silence and immediately assume there is no care. They notice the distance and believe the other person is simply uninterested. They think that if someone truly valued the connection, they would always communicate clearly, stay consistent, and never create moments of confusion. But this explanation does not always match reality when you are dealing with someone who has strong feelings, but also feels afraid of those feelings. Avoidant individuals are not emotionless. They are not incapable of forming deep bonds or experiencing genuine love. In many cases, they actually feel much more than they are able to express. The challenge is not that emotions are missing. The challenge is that those emotions can become too intense, too overwhelming, and too difficult for them to process in a healthy way. When emotions start becoming stronger inside a close relationship, something changes within an avoidant person's mind. What one person experiences as comfort, closeness, and emotional safety, another person may experience as pressure and vulnerability. What feels like a beautiful moment of connection to you may feel like a risk they are not prepared to take. They may truly enjoy your presence. They may remember small details about you. They may think about conversations you had and replay moments you shared. They may miss you while still creating distance. They may want your attention while also feeling the urge to escape from it. This is the confusing part that many people struggle to understand. The same person who moves closer emotionally can suddenly become the person who steps away. But the reason is not always because they stopped caring. Sometimes it happens because the feelings became real enough to activate their fears. When the connection starts feeling serious, when the bond begins to feel permanent, their instinct is often not to move closer, but to create space. They are not always running away from you. Sometimes they are running away from the intensity they feel inside themselves. They are trying to regain control over emotions that suddenly feel too powerful. They are trying to calm an internal storm that they do not know how to explain. And this is the hidden part most people never see. The distance may look like rejection, but sometimes it is actually a defense mechanism created by fear. This pattern usually has deeper roots. Avoidant attachment often develops through years of emotional experiences that taught a person to protect themselves. Maybe their emotions were ignored when they were younger. Maybe they learned that showing sadness, needing comfort, or asking for support was something to hide. Maybe they grew up believing that depending on others would only lead to disappointment. Over time, they trained themselves to handle everything alone. They became experts at appearing strong, independent, and unaffected. But underneath that strength, there can still be a person who wants connection and closeness. The problem is that emotional intimacy can feel unfamiliar and unsafe. When someone gets close enough to truly see them, it can trigger fears they have spent years avoiding. They may worry about losing control. They may fear being hurt. They may fear becoming too dependent on someone else. So instead of moving toward the person they care about, they create emotional distance. They become quieter. They hide their thoughts. They act like nothing matters. But that outer behavior does not always tell the complete story. Sometimes the person who says the least is fighting the loudest battle inside. And the next time you see someone pull away after a meaningful connection, remember this. Distance does not always mean a lack of feeling. Sometimes it is the only way they know how to protect themselves from feelings that feel too powerful to face. The truth is often hidden beneath the behavior, and once you understand that hidden layer, you stop seeing their silence as a simple rejection and start recognizing the emotional conflict happening behind it. The walls begin to rise and the emotional distance starts to appear. From your side, it can look like someone who has completely stopped caring. It can feel like their feelings disappeared overnight. But from their side, it is often an attempt to protect themselves from emotions that feel too powerful, too unfamiliar, and too difficult to manage openly. You can usually see this pattern through the repeated cycles of connection and distance. There are moments when they are truly present with you, moments when they seem warm, interested, attentive, and perhaps even affectionate in the limited ways they know how to express themselves. During those times, you get a glimpse of who they really are beneath the defenses. You see the person underneath the emotional armor. Those moments are genuine. They are not fake. They are not carefully created illusions. The connection you feel during those times is real, but then almost unexpectedly, something changes. The energy shifts. They begin creating distance. They become more difficult to reach. Their replies become shorter, slower, or disappear completely. The warmth that was there suddenly feels replaced by silence and emotional coldness. From your perspective, it looks like inconsistency. It looks like someone who cannot decide what they want or someone who is unsure about their feelings. But from their perspective, it is not confusion. It is a protective reaction. It is the emotional strategy they have learned to use whenever closeness starts feeling overwhelming. They are not always trying to confuse you. They are often trying to control an emotional experience inside themselves that feels too heavy to carry. And this is the part many people never see. Their distance is not always a lack of care. Sometimes it is a response to caring more than they know how to handle. What makes this situation even harder to understand is that many avoidant people are not completely aware of the battle happening inside them. They may miss you while convincing themselves they are perfectly fine without you. They may feel a strong connection with you while telling themselves that they should not need anyone. They may genuinely value you, but struggle to transform those emotions into words that can be safely shared. This conflict between what they feel internally and what they allow themselves to express externally creates behavior that appears detached. It can look like they are cold. It can look like they are unaffected. But beneath that surface, there may be a constant struggle between emotion and protection. This is why judging them only by what they show on the outside can lead you toward painful misunderstandings. Their silence is not always proof that they do not care. Their retreat is not always evidence that they have forgotten you. Sometimes it is the only way they know to handle emotions that feel too intense for their current emotional ability. This does not mean their behavior cannot hurt you. It does not mean your feelings or needs should be ignored. Your experience matters too. But understanding the deeper reason behind their actions can completely change how you see the situation. Instead of asking, why do they feel nothing? A more revealing question may be, why do these feelings become so overwhelming that they feel the need to shut down? That single change in perspective can transform everything. Because when you understand that the struggle may not be the absence of emotion, but the fear of emotional intensity, the behavior that once looked like a lack of love begins to reveal another possibility. It may be a person who is afraid of what those feelings mean. One of the biggest mistakes people make in these situations is believing that distance automatically means rejection. When someone becomes distant after a period of closeness, your mind naturally searches for an explanation. You start wondering if you did something wrong. You question whether you were too much. You wonder if their feelings were never genuine. You begin measuring your value based on their withdrawal. But with avoidant patterns, the distance is often not a direct reflection of your worth. It is usually connected to what is happening inside them. In many cases, the closer they feel to someone, the more vulnerable they become. And the more vulnerable they feel, the stronger their instinct to protect themselves becomes. For someone who has spent years avoiding emotional exposure, deep connection does not always feel comforting. Sometimes it feels dangerous. It brings up fears of losing control, being hurt, becoming dependent, or needing someone too much. So they create space because space gives them a temporary feeling of safety. The distance is not always a punishment. It is often a way of calming their internal emotions. From the outside, it can appear as if they suddenly changed into a completely different person. One moment they are engaged, caring, and emotionally available in their own way. The next moment they become quiet, distant, and almost unreachable. It feels like a switch has been turned off, and in a way, something has changed. Their defense system has activated, but most of the time, this reaction is not planned or intentional. It is automatic. It is a learned response that appears when things start feeling too serious, too close, or too emotionally real. The most painful part of this dynamic is that avoidant people often do not explain what is happening while it is happening. They usually do not say, I need some time because this closeness is bringing up emotions I do not know how to manage. Instead, they simply step back. They create distance without giving you the missing information. And then the person left behind is forced to create an explanation for the silence. Unfortunately, the human mind often chooses the most painful explanation first. You assume they do not care. You assume you are not important. You assume the connection meant less to them than it meant to you. But the reality may be very different. Their need for space is not always a statement about your importance. It is often a reflection of their emotional capacity at that moment. When you respond to their withdrawal by chasing harder, sending more messages, seeking constant reassurance, or trying to force closeness again, it can accidentally increase the pressure they were already trying to escape. They stepped back because they needed room to breathe, but now they feel even more emotionally crowded. This creates the painful cycle many people become trapped inside. One person reaches for connection because they feel the distance. The other person moves farther away because they feel the pressure. Both people end up feeling misunderstood. Recognizing this pattern does not mean accepting every behavior or ignoring your own emotional needs. It simply allows you to stop interpreting every moment of distance as a personal rejection. Sometimes it is a protective reaction from someone trying to manage emotions they have never learned to handle differently. When you see the pattern clearly, you stop reacting only from hurt. You begin responding with awareness, and that awareness gives you something powerful, the ability to protect your own peace while understanding what may be happening beneath the surface. One of the hardest parts of caring about someone with avoidant tendencies is the lack of clear communication about what they truly feel. You may spend a lot of time waiting for direct reassurance. You want to hear simple words that confirm you matter. You want to know that the connection was meaningful. You want proof that they think about you when you are not around. But those expressions often do not come easily from someone who struggles with emotional vulnerability. Even when they do share something meaningful, they may quickly change the subject or create distance afterward because the openness itself feels uncomfortable. But the absence of emotional words does not automatically mean the absence of emotional feelings. For an avoidant person, expressing what is inside can feel like exposing a hidden part of themselves. It can feel like giving someone access to a place they have spent years protecting. For someone who learned that vulnerability can lead to disappointment or pain, opening up can feel risky. Many avoidant individuals process emotions privately. They think about their feelings alone. They analyze them. They question them. Sometimes they even try to convince themselves that they do not feel as deeply as they actually do. Even when the emotion is genuine and powerful, they may struggle to accept it, communicate it, or allow another person to see it. And this hidden internal battle is often the reason their actions seem so confusing from the outside. There is often an internal barrier that stops their true emotions from reaching the outside world. They may have something meaningful they want to tell you. They may feel the words forming inside their mind. The moment comes when they could finally open up, but they stop themselves. Not because they suddenly stopped caring, but because saying those feelings out loud makes them feel more real, more serious, and more difficult to control. When you put an emotion into words, you are also accepting that the emotion exists. You are giving it a name. You are making it harder to ignore. And for someone who has learned to protect themselves by keeping emotional distance and uncertainty, that realization can feel overwhelming. It can feel like they are opening a door they are not sure they are ready to walk through. Because of this, their emotions often appear through actions instead of direct communication. Their feelings may come through small behaviors that seem ordinary at first, but become meaningful when you understand the person behind them. They may contact you after a long period of silence without explaining why. They may remember a small detail about your life that even you forgot you shared. They may show care through practical support, helping you, checking on you, or doing something useful instead of saying the emotional words you are hoping to hear. These actions can seem small, but they can carry a deeper message. This is often the emotional language available to someone who has not learned how to express their inner world openly. The challenge is that this creates a painful distance between what they feel and what you are able to receive. You may be looking for clear reassurance, honest conversations, and direct expressions of affection. Instead, you receive a simple message, a small favor, or a quiet attempt to reconnect. And even though those actions may be meaningful, they can still leave you feeling unsatisfied. Over time, this emotional gap can create frustration. You start wondering where you stand. You begin questioning whether you truly matter to them. You may miss the signs of care because they do not arrive in the form you expected. But sometimes the message is there. It is simply being delivered in a language you were not taught to recognize. There is another important layer to understand. Avoidant people do not always have complete awareness of their own emotions. It is not only that they struggle to express their feelings, sometimes they struggle to fully understand them themselves. They may feel a strong connection with you while also feeling uncomfortable with how powerful that connection has become. They may miss you while convincing themselves that they are completely independent and do not need anyone. They may feel drawn toward you while another part of them is warning them to create distance. This inner conflict makes emotional communication even harder because they do not want to make promises or statements that they are not sure they can maintain. When they finally share something personal, it may come out in a very quiet or casual way. They may quickly change the subject afterward. They may act as if what they said was not a big deal. But sometimes those small moments reveal much more than they realize. For someone who normally protects themselves through emotional distance, even a small admission of care can represent a major step. It means they allowed themselves to become visible for a moment. They allowed someone else to see behind the walls they usually keep standing. And that is why those moments should not always be judged by how dramatic they appear. Sometimes the smallest emotional expressions require the greatest amount of courage from someone who has spent years hiding what they feel. Now pay close attention, because this is the sign that often reveals more about an avoidant person's emotions than anything else. It is not just their words, because their words are often carefully controlled. It is not their consistency, because consistency is often the very area where they struggle the most. The strongest sign is much simpler. They keep finding their way back, even after distance, even after silence, even after moments when it seems like they have completely disconnected. At some point, they return. Sometimes it happens quietly. A simple message appears, a small reaction, a casual question, a subtle attempt to enter your world again without directly addressing the distance that happened before. Other times, the return is more obvious. They make an effort to reconnect. They try to continue the conversation. They attempt to rebuild the emotional bridge that was left behind. And this is the part that leaves many people confused. They wonder, how can someone who seems so capable of walking away keep coming back? The answer reveals the conflict happening inside them. Someone who feels absolutely nothing usually does not experience this repeated pull toward the same person. True emotional detachment does not create a constant urge to reconnect. When there is no meaningful attachment, the separation becomes easier and more final. But when an avoidant person has genuine feelings, those feelings do not simply disappear during periods of withdrawal. They may push them down, they may distract themselves, they may convince themselves that distance is the right choice. They may try to logically explain why they should not feel so connected. But the emotion remains underneath the surface. It becomes quieter, but it does not completely disappear. What you are seeing in this cycle is not a person who has no feelings. You are seeing an internal struggle becoming visible through their behavior. Their return happens because the part of them that wants connection becomes stronger than the part that wants protection. The distance did not remove the bond. It only created enough space for their emotional defenses to relax. When they come back, it is often because the intensity that caused them to retreat has lowered. They feel calmer, they feel safer, they feel more capable of approaching the connection again. The desire to be close starts becoming stronger than the fear that pushed them away. But there is something important to remember. Their return does not automatically mean the deeper issue has been solved. The fear that created the distance in the first place may still exist. The same emotional trigger that caused them to withdraw before can appear again when the relationship begins feeling intense or vulnerable. This is why the pattern can repeat. Closeness happens, fear appears, distance follows, then the desire for connection returns. The cycle continues until there is greater awareness and emotional growth. Understanding this pattern does not mean ignoring your own needs or accepting endless confusion. It means recognizing that behavior often has a deeper story behind it. The person who walks away and returns may not be showing a lack of emotion. They may be showing a struggle between wanting connection and fearing what connection requires from them. And once you understand that hidden battle, you stop seeing every withdrawal as proof that you were never important. You begin seeing the difference between someone who does not care and someone who cares but has not yet learned how to stay emotionally present when things become real.